across the strip of
It's crazy to think that they were so close.
Oh, that's how war works. You gotta feed it with propaganda
No,
to feed
I
the
know,
war.
but like literally bayoneting kids. I don't think they were doing that. Old time selfies. Welcome back, lads and lassies. It is your favorite Midwest couple here, and we are back here today to do another reaction video.
Surprise, surprise. No.
This one's going to be a learning one, though.
Okay.
Anyway, guys. Oh, before we start the video, though, first, I just want to say, officially, British people are crazy.
What? Why?
Yeah, they're absolutely insane.
Did I miss something?
They start getting ready for Christmas in August.
Oh my, yes, that is completely
what
insane.
The hell, guys? Like, I'm sorry. I know Christmas is a huge deal, but that's like 4 or 5 months in advance. Like, I know some of the people I was talking with on Instagram, they're like already literally going Christmas shopping.
It's September.
That was in August. I get trying to beat the rush.
Even this month is crazy.
I get trying to beat the rush and stuff, but guys, come on. It's like,
if everyone's doing it, there's still a rush then at that point, I would think.
Over here, as you guys probably know, like, stores start getting it out maybe after Halloween.
Yeah, not usually before. I mean, people are doing Halloween stuff now, which is already
just started.
It's a whole over a month away.
6 weeks. But honestly, like, most Americans, I want to say on average, like, you wait till after Thanksgiving. Like, there's even...
to at least put out your decorations.
Yeah, before you do decorations, you wait till
at least too many of them.
Most people wait till after Thanksgiving. A lot of people, though, you'll see, like, set up the Christmas tree, like, the day after Thanksgiving.
That's true.
But still, they wait. I know you guys don't have Thanksgiving over there, but at least wait till after Halloween. I mean, come on.
What's the rush?
I don't know. Anyway, you guys are officially crazy. But...
following in that crazy.
But the reason why I bring up Christmas is because the video we're doing has been recommended to me for several months now. It is the Christmas Truce of 1914, World War I. I don't really know anything about it other than it happened. I think they played football. But yeah, we're going to get into this video and learn more about it.
And I know even less about it. So,
before we get into the video, guys, like, share, and turn the notification bell on so you don't miss out on any of the content. All of the social media ways to contact me is down below in the description box. Let's get right into this video and learn about the Christmas Truce of 1914.
In 2016, IWM was contacted by the family of one of the soldiers shown in this photograph. We now know that this is Arno Bohm, a German soldier standing alongside British troops from the London Rifle Brigade. They're standing together in the middle of no man's land during the Christmas Truce of 1914.
The helmets at that time were still like, it was like that mix between old age and modern age. That's one thing that's so interesting about
some of it looks like they're not wearing helmets, just hats, like warm caps.
They're not fighting.
Okay, yeah, but
that's one thing that's interesting about World War I. It was that mix between modern and old. That's
the wars?
Yeah, that's one thing that's really interesting about it. Because they still used horses, but then they introduced tanks later on.
In the World War I? Okay.
This photograph captures a moment so unusual in the First World War that many people at the time, and to this day, believed it to be a myth. In the midst of a brutal, total war, how did this momentary peace come about? What impact did it have in the course of the First World War? And why did it never happen again?
We were in the front line. We were about 300 yards from the Germans, and we had, I think, on Christmas Eve, we'd been singing carols and this, that, and the other. And the Germans had been doing the same, and we'd been shouting to each other, sometimes rude remarks, more often just joking remarks. Eventually a German said, "Tomorrow you no shoot, we no shoot."
At the start of the war, many believed it would all be over by Christmas. However, by December that year, it was obvious that this was not the case, and thousands of families and soldiers were facing a Christmas of separation, grief, and hardship.
Yeah, so that's one thing I looked up. Obviously, I knew World War I had started in 1914, but I didn't know when. It started sometime in July. So this is just like 5 months.
Yeah, it's pretty new still, because I don't think it ended till 17 or 18.
It was 18 when it ended.
Yeah,
but still, like, this is like very, very fresh into the war.
Yeah, interesting.
So for those soldiers who are in the trenches over winter 1914, the conditions would have gotten gradually worse and worse. So you got a lot of rain, a lot of frost, and the general living conditions would have been terrible.
But the British troops were not alone. In the trenches opposite theirs, sometimes only 30 yards away across the strip of
It's
no
crazy
man's
to think
land,
that they were so
were
close.
German soldiers in the exact same situation.
Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, it had nothing to do with like they both were sharing the hardships.
Yeah.
Like, they were both in the mud and the cold and the supply, the supply chains were like right behind and stuff. Like it was hard to get
They were
supplies
probably both
through all those
miserable.
trenches. Yeah, it's just like a really shitty situation.
For sure. Well, any war really is.
No, I know. Okay, obviously any war, but like trench warfare is just miserable.
German soldiers in the exact same situation.
There was lots of opportunity for each side to communicate with the other. And this was a regular thing which happened right from the start of trench warfare. But communication would often be in the form of soldiers from one side shouting over insults to those in the other trenches. But what was interesting at Christmas is that both sides actually started to communicate in more friendly terms. It really began with the Germans singing Christmas carols and setting up Christmas trees on top of their parapets. And so they came to very much empathise with one another.
I remember very well Christmas. I remember the Christmas day when the German and the French soldiers left their trenches, went to the barbed wire between them with champagne and cigarettes in their hands, and had feelings of fraternization and shouted they wanted to finish the war.
Wow.
And that lasted only 2 days, 1.5 really, and then strict order came that no fraternization was allowed, and we had to stay back in our trenches.
That sucks though, because obviously they wouldn't have ended the war at that time.
Yeah.
But both sides could have just. I mean, it would have been mutiny.
Probably, because the
you
people in
could-
power were still like feuding over whatever.
I just
started
can't
it.
imagine after having a day together, whatever, like having that moment and then just going back to killing each other.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
that'd be rough.
Fraternization was allowed, and we had to stay back in our trenches.
The Christmas truce varied in different parts of the front line. Ceasefires were hastily arranged, sometimes to enable the collection and burial of bodies or to allow the trenches to be repaired. In other cases, the soldiers simply enjoyed fraternising with the other side.
And we shared fags, goodies with the Germans. And then
Which, just so you, if you don't know, fags is
A cigarette.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard that one before.
Just,
I'm following along.
Just saying.
we shared fags, goodies with the Germans. And then from somewhere, somehow, this football appeared.
Was it a
Interesting. Came from
It was
heaven.
a proper football. But we didn't form a team. It wasn't a team game in any sense of the word. You know, it was a kickabout. Everybody was having a go. It came from their side. It wasn't from our side where the ball came.
How many people were taking part, do you think?
Well, I should think there'd be at least a couple of hundred.
Wow.
Did you kick the ball?
Oh yes, I had a go at it. I was pretty good then, 19.
But while some parts of the front line were playing football and swapping stories, others were confused by what they heard or felt no inclination to socialise with those they had so recently been fighting.
After a few moments, there were lighted objects raised above the German parapet. The Germans were shouting over to our trench. There's no doubt about that at all. And before we could take any action or do anything, we were ordered to open rapid fire, you see,
Oh man.
which we did. The Germans did not reply to our rapid fire. They simply carried on with their celebrations and were having a very fine time indeed. They certainly were not going to do it anymore. They thought that we were idiots, I suppose. We were. Well, not us, but the command, you see.
The way that trench warfare was organised in the First World War, each sector was very distinctive, and so you wouldn't necessarily know what was happening in the sector next door to you. And you do get stories of one area of the front where they're experiencing a truce, but then suddenly they get fired on by the troops in the next sector who don't realise what's happening.
For those soldiers not involved, the truce must have seemed unbelievable, and even more so for those back home. For months, the media and government propaganda had shaped a perception of German soldiers as bloodthirsty enemies, baby eaters, devils, ruthless killers. But
Jeez. mean, I'm just sorry. Like, I don't think the Germans.
Well, that's how war works. You gotta feed it with propaganda
No,
to feed
I
the war.
know, but
going.
like literally bayoneting kids. I don't think they were doing that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I could be wrong, but I don't think they were like just ruthless, pillaging, ravaging people.
I'm sure you had.
I'm sure there were
people on
some,
both
but
sides that did something horrible at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Like war's awful. It really is.
Okay, is it just me or is the one cartoon with the guy in the pipe and the hat look like Churchill?
That's just you.
Okay, I'm just like, I don't know who that's supposed to be.
It looks more like Stalin to me.
Oh, does it? I don't think I've ever seen
I think
Stalin.
Stalin had a little eyeglass. I'm pretty sure.
Monocle.
Yeah, monocle.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember.
But news of the remarkable Christmas truce soon spread abroad. By the end of December, letters and photos arrived home, and newspapers began to publish accounts of the truce.
My father was delighted to have a letter giving such a description of events, and he sent them up to the Daily Telegraph. I got into a frightful rocket. That showed up that it must have been me who wrote it, and Mossy got hold of me, gave me an awful dressing down, for daring to write to the press. But of course I didn't. My old man wrote to the press.
These photographs were taken on personal cameras that some soldiers had taken with them into the trenches.
Wow.
Old-time selfies.
I mean, that kind of historical... People, I don't know if it was just like, oh, a camera's cool back then, but I think a lot of people are like, this is important.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask
to document.
You a question since you're a photographer.
Yes.
At that time, were they still having to, like, sit there for, like, 10 minutes to... I think it's probably a little faster, right?
Yeah, I think they had faster pocket-type cameras at that point.
Okay.
I don't think they had flash on the little ones.
But they have the old reel, like a little film roll.
Yeah, I think it still had film. I think you could still take several pictures on a... I don't know that much.
It's just, it really is, it is nice that it's photographed, because just going back and seeing these
Something
old
like that
photos.
could have just easily been lost in history without the evidence that they show, which is really cool.
These photographs were taken on personal cameras that some soldiers had taken with them into the trenches. Photography in the trenches was discouraged for obvious reasons, but during the Christmas truce of 1914, soldiers on both sides of the trenches could not resist the opportunity to document such a unique event.
Exactly.
At the beginning of January 1915, the newspapers suddenly start printing these letters. And to begin with, there was a certain amount of disbelief. But then over time, suddenly photographs started to appear as well. And by that time, the evidence was clear that this did happen. It wasn't a myth. And the media at the time absolutely loved it. There were lots of discussions in the newspapers about whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. And, you know, in a way, it's a wonderful snapshot of Christmas 1914 when attitudes were still slightly naive because the war had only really just begun. You find that in 1915 and onwards, the war becomes almost a much more serious endeavour.
The Christmas truce would come to be remembered as something of a blip in the regular conduct of the war. It conflicted with the patriotic aggression required by both sides. It also served to highlight the great contrast between war and religion. How can you fight a war of aggression while also celebrating Christmas, the traditional time for peace and goodwill? For those reasons, the Christmas truce was increasingly seen as unimportant and awkward to fit into the standard narrative of the First World War.
You never get anything like the Christmas truce happening again. And over time, not only is it seen as an anomaly, but almost as a myth. And it gets to the point where people are actually doubting whether it happened in the first place, which continues, you know, right up to this day. So there's still a lot of confusion about whether there was a football match played and things like this.
I don't get why it would be considered a myth unless maybe it was romanticized by the soldiers that were there.
Maybe.
Like that's something. I mean, they have photographs and stories.
Yeah, I can see how it definitely happened, but like what the one guy was saying, it could have been like the whole football aspect could have been askewed.
That's what I'm saying, romanticized.
Yeah.
Like they, over time, the story isn't quite as accurate as it.
Well, yeah, everything wants to be elaborated.
I mean, I hope it is true. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just
well, it definitely seems true to some extent, for sure.
I know, but playing a football match is pretty cool.
It's hard when things are over 100 years old now. That's crazy. It's hard to keep the facts
Well, it's kind
straight.
of cool that they had football. Then that was like one
Yeah.
There was like the language barrier. They didn't need the
talk to each
like
other.
the language
They
barrier
know
wasn't
what
a
to do.
problem because like it's a universal sport over there.
any ball, kick it, you know?
About whether there was a football match played and things like this.
We didn't cross to France until March of 1915, but although it would be arrogant to say that the thing didn't actually take place, I very much doubt whether anything of the nature or magnitude that has been claimed for it took place at all. Now, the purpose of that barbed wire in the trenches was to keep each side in its own place. Therefore, why would anybody try to break that? And if anybody tried, what were the NCOs doing? What were the officers doing? I think the whole thing borders on the fairy tale and may be classed with the Russians with snow on their boots and the angels of Mons.
We know by looking at German newspapers that Christmas truce was covered there in a very similar way to how it was in Britain. In the 1920s and the 1930s, you see definite examples of how the Christmas truce changes in its depiction, because there was a much greater emphasis then on the German soldier as a hero fighting a noble war, whereas the Christmas truce conflicts with that to a degree. So in Germany in particular, the Christmas truce goes out of favour definitely in the 20s and 30s, whereas in Britain it continues to be the popular celebrated story as part of the First World War.
The letters and photographs that reached home in Britain confirmed that this remarkable event had indeed taken place, but it was one that was not to be repeated.
The Christmas truce was unique, and nothing like it happened again to that scale. And the reasons for this are varied. Immediately after the truce, the high command of both sides stepped in to make sure that fraternisation and ceasefires like this would not happen in the same way. But also, in the long term, the real reason that truces like this didn't happen is that the war changed the way in which it was being fought. As the war progressed, there's a more centralised method.
Yeah, see, that was like one of the early tanks.
Yeah, well, I saw they had the big cannons still.
The mortars, yeah.
Yeah, those are scary.
Seeing the old tanks, though, they just look so weird. They really do.
They look like all wheels.
Could you imagine, though?
Treads, whatever.
Could you imagine not knowing what it is and just hearing?
Oh, when the first one came.
The first one came.
Didn't the first one come from the Germans?
I'm not for sure who made the first one. I'd be interested to know that.
I don't remember.
But still, like, you know, like you're used to horses, and you obviously have the big mortar guns, but then you hear the rattling, like,
yeah,
and then this weird alien-looking thing comes rolling at you.
As the war progressed, there's a more centralised method of command. Those in the front line would have been forced into constant aggression. You would have had artillery and trench mortar units constantly going. And also, of course, as the war progressed, it took a far nastier turn, so you get things like gas warfare introduced, increasing number of civilian casualties. You also get incidents like the sinking of the Lusitania. The temptation, I suppose, to empathise with the enemy and the desire to fraternise with them changed dramatically from 1915 onwards.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see.
I could see it partially also because the more killing you do with each other, the more you lose on either side, so the more hatred is going to grow between the two sides. So there's just like, that one moment in time of peace was early on, and that's probably the only way that could have happened was early on.
Yeah, especially since it was also like the first major war.
Yeah. Of course, at that point, I don't think it had become a world war. It was just between the two, mainly.
Three,
maybe? Yeah, because the French were involved.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I guess they fought plenty before, but I don't know, it is interesting. It's like, say, like seeing all these dead bodies as opposed to like the happy time. It's just, I don't know. It's rough seeing these photos for sure. It's just crazy how many people die in major wars like this.
And this got way too heavy.
Sorry.
It can be argued that the Christmas truce made little difference to the course of the First World War, but it would be remembered as a crucial moment in history. The truce has featured in films, television programmes, inspired songs, and even featured in adverts. It's become part of the symbolism used when discussing the First World War, as synonymous with that conflict as poppies, mud, and war poets. This unique event has become legendary, in part because the idea of peace at Christmas in such an unlikely place is an irresistible story. But its enduring legacy is also due to these incredible photographs and the interviews from those who were there, documenting an event that to so many still seems wholly unbelievable.
It looks dumb.
I know. That was actually really interesting because I'd not heard of any of like that history at all, pretty much.
The only thing I had heard is just like people message like, "Oh, check this out!" Like they played football. I knew that was the case, but my thing is I want to know which side stepped out first.
Well, it kind of sounded like, according to this, that the British were the ones that had the idea. I think.
Well, no, the Germans. They said that the Germans said you don't shoot. We
oh,
don't
that's
shoot.
right.
Yeah. I just want to know who officially actually took this step out and just stood there.
And was there a white flag involved?
I don't know.
Just that.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, I even have to watch it. I don't think it's a myth. I hope it's not a myth, honestly.
Yeah.
I hope it's true because after like, then when they showed all those bodies, it's just like crazy the contrast.
Yeah. It's an interesting point in history for sure that something like that can happen, and I feel like that's happened in other wars and other things, but maybe.
This is the
not.
stories I've heard. I know, in, like at least the Civil War, there was like trading going on. There were like certain people that would like go to the other sides and trade because they would get together somewhat and like trade tobacco for coffee or vice versa.
Okay, yeah, because everyone's losing out on supplies and stuff, so you're able to be like, okay, we got to keep fighting, but we make it a little bit nicer. We've got excess this, we've got excess that. Yeah, I could see stuff like that.
I think there was like minor camaraderie, but what makes this so unique is it was a major, like hundreds or thousands.
Of people. Well, I don't know about thousands. It sounded like it was just hundreds.
Well, still hundreds from different sides getting together and actually like taking photos and laughing.
Yeah.
And, like having a Christmas day together is
that's
very
nice
unique.
For a full day and a half, pretty much. That's
what about getting shot.
Yeah, just like that peace of mind.
Anyway, guys, thanks for recommending this. It is an interesting moment of history to check out.
Yeah. Learn something new every day.
Yeah, because I had no idea like to the scale or how important this was and how it's like inspired, like she was saying, like movies and music and photos and art and just a moment of guys like not wanting to kill each other and then, like, now we're like talking and learning about it over 100 years later.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing. But thank you guys again for the recommendation. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you thought of the video down below and let us know if you know some interesting facts during this time.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, we'll catch you guys in the next video. Please be safe, take care, look after one another, and cheers.